Hello, I'm back from my night shift. A day 1 experience update with the Glacial Cascade martial artist league starter, and I'm here to bring it to you. It's very satisfying to level with. I just finished a campaign, the interlude, which turned out to be a mix between Frozen Locust and Wave of Frost for general clearing later on. Early on, you're relying on Frozen Locust as well as Glacial Cascade for single target and AoE, but later on, Glacial Cascade is just here to clean up some additional enemies that are a little bit more tanky. The build is a ton of fun to play, extremely hard to kill, even with gear 30 levels below the intended difficulty because of the way of the mountain martial artist passive, giving you basically 30% DR all the time. Screens just shatter with a very satisfying sound profile, and we are also melee, but actually we are ranged, with a ton of mobility inbuilt into our skills to move away from packs after damaging them. So we are very much hardcore friendly, especially if you invest more into defenses and not run around with the same gear for like 40 levels. Now, as for the build guide, it's still up to date just until Act 3. After Act 3, in Act 4 and beyond, we move on to a few additional things, which I will discuss in this video and give you the update here. But you can, of course, check out the written build guide on Mobalytics. I will update it every single day, and I also have a leveling checklist for those of you that are still in the campaign to check out if you want to do a tag along. First up, let's have a look at the mechanics with some live gameplay, followed by the gem setup as well as day 1 passive tree. Now first, let's start with the mechanics. We have our Frozen Locust as well as our Wave of Frost. Those are our bread and butter. We're live in the tier 1 map with a plus 7% damage to extra lightning. We have basically no resistances, no defenses, nothing at all. So I can show you that the way of the mountain is absolutely broken. It provides you with so much defenses that you actually, in maps currently at the first tier, you don't need any additional gear. You just run around like it's nothing. We have enemies here. We explode them with our Frozen Locust. Sometimes it just explodes immediately by touching enemies. They hit it and it just detonates. Otherwise, we have to use a Wave Frost, or we run back and use a spike on it and it will detonate. The explosion is majestic. It's absolutely gigantic because we are utilizing Magnified Area 2 as well as some additional shenanigans in the passive tree. So we have our elite enemy here. We use our Wave of Frost, freeze it. Then we use our Wave of Thunder, whatever, and we are going to blow the enemy to pieces. We apply our shock through Stormwave, not through Tempest Flurry. Why through Stormwave? Stormwave has an inbuilt more chance to shock, so it's basically always going to apply shock. Make sure it's on the second weapon set, by the way. This one, the normal strikes don't have this. The third strike doesn't have this. Only the fourth one has the more chance to shock, as well as the additional magnitude. So we have to be in the danger for quite a while before we actually see any results. And that's pretty bad for a build like this. We want to be ranged. We want to move around and duck and get out of the way. Our Frozen Locust is moving us. Our Wave of Frost is moving us. And we are relatively mobile while we can move, while we have our Glacial Cascade active. It's very slow, same with the Storm Wave, but we can actually move around a little bit. So we run through maps and just explode them. That's about it. For regular enemies, we don't even need to apply the shock. We just detonate them. As you can see here, we have a rage bar. That's because we have rage on the Wave of Frost, and by hitting enemies we generate 5 rage. In between packs this rage will disappear, but we can maintain this one actually by hitting our own Frozen Locust. Frozen Locust is a target that's getting hit, and this will prevent our rage from dropping. So in between packs you just drop one like so, or like so. So you just move around like this constantly. Just have to be careful about enemies jumping you from behind. And every time we freeze an enemy, we get a mountain teaching stack. Enemies will hit us, as you can see here. If the damage would be dealing us enough damage to drop us below 30% of our health, we reduce the damage by 40% until we don't have any mountain teachings, and then we are much squishier. And every time we use an ability that can utilize this teaching, we are going to consume stacks. So we are not always at maximum stacks, which is 28 or 30 or something, but most of the time we utilize it. So for the boss fight, we're going to target the boss with our skills, Hand of Chayula, which has Frozen Mark on it, as well as Stormwave to apply the shock. So we apply first the mark, then our shock, and then we are going to blast the enemy to pieces. In some arenas, your Frost Wave will not be able to hit the Locust, In some arenas, there will be no issue. I have no idea what's causing this. It's really annoying when it happens. Even without a freeze, we deal quite decent damage. Remember, we have basically shit gear. We have only one ascendancy point currently. And usually we freeze enemies by popping everything with our frost wave. But for some reason, it just doesn't do its job here. So if we force a freeze on the enemy, like this one now it's frozen, and now we deal around 200k damage and additional damage afterwards. So bosses drop like flies if we actually can fight them with decent mechanics and they don't bug out like this one. Now, regarding the skill gems, we're going to utilize Glacial Cascade with Concentrated Area, Elemental Armament, Long Shot, as well as Elemental Focus. Long Shot will only be effective at around 20% because Glacial Cascade has a maximum wavelength of 4.8. We want to hit the enemy with the tip of the Glacial Cascade, which is called tipping by some content creators. I don't like it, so I will just spike them. We cannot apply the freeze itself because we are using Elemental Focus, but Glacial Cascade also deals very abysmal freeze build-up, so it's not worth to keep it around anyway. Then we have Frozen Locus, which doesn't have an initial attack damage modifier here, only attack speed. This one is hidden in the explosion. So once we detonate the crystal by damaging it, either with the tip of our glacial spike or detonate it with our wave of frost, or enemies hit it and it explodes, we deal 400 additional damage to the target and everyone around it. We utilize increased area of effect, cold attunement, elemental armament, and ice bite. Ice bite provides us with 30% additional damage, more damage for all our skills once we freeze the enemy with the supported skill. Now, how does Frozen Locus work? It's a detonation and explosion at the very end, so it's summarized into one gigantic hit with the target ability that detonated it, this one, and then it is applied. So if we freeze an enemy with the Frozen Locus by hitting it with a different ability like this one, it will still count as being frozen by Frozen Locus and provide us with the Ice Bite 2. Now we have Wave of Frost. Wave of Frost provides us with Cold Attunement, Magnified Area to have the gigantic area of effect. Then we have Elemental Armament as well as Rage 3. Now Rage, I already explained, we stack this one by hitting our own Ice Crystals. We built this one up, and one Rage is equivalent to 1% more damage with all our attack damage. Now, since we are utilizing Wave of Frost and attack skill, Frozen Locus, a melee attack skill, and we have Glacial Cascade also an attack skill, we are benefiting from both the Ice Bite as well as Rage 3 for our damage. Then we have Herald of Ice. We scale this one with Magnified Area, which also is an attack skill. Then we have Cold Attunement, Elemental Armament, and Frozen Spite. Frozen Spite doesn't proc all that often, but if it does, it will leave around 3 projectiles that deal 10% of the frozen target's maximum life was killed. Now, if we have a pack and we freeze it like this, and there is like one elite enemy, and there is like 6 of those particles, that's 60% of those are around the target, 60% health, there is cold damage. We scale this one, and that this one will clean up most packs, even without our additional Glacial Spike. Then we have Storm Wave. Initially, you're going to utilize Tempest Flurry with Shock as well as Lightning Attunement. Later on, you will switch to Storm Wave with Shock, Lightning Attunement, Shock Conduction, and Elemental Armament. We want to deal a little bit damage with this one anyway, but most importantly, we have Shock Conduction. If we look at the pack with a lot of tough enemies and we want to increase the damage they take because they're either dangerous or whatever shenanigans they're planning to do, we can proliferate the shock to other enemies in the group. So really helpful one. Now, Hand of Chayula is planned to have Freezing Mark, prolonged duration, as well as efficiency to lower the cost, as well as Elemental Weakness. Now, Elemental Weakness is capped by the enemy level, so we need to level this one. We don't have the intelligence to wield this one because we are sitting at 69. It's purely coincidence, but we want to slot this one in a 4-way and then apply it with Hand of Chayula on bosses or tougher enemies. For our 2 other reserves, we have Wind Dancer as well as Ghost Dance. Currently, I have Uncapped Spirit with this one, so if we look into a support gem for Wind Dancer, there is some nifty stuff like Cannibalism or Clarity or Dire Strike with quite a lot of potential things we can slot into this one to increase our potency. Now, I was speaking about the ginormous Frost Wave. Out of bounds. Massive. Look at this. We get 45% here, and we get in the skill tree around 50% here, and an additional 8% here. So basically 100% additional which will make the build feel much, much better because all of our spells scale with this one. Even Glacial Cascade, technically. So this one is reduced, but without the reduction, it would be like this. So much, much bigger. Still, it's for single target or tightly packed multi-target fights. You can hit actually 2 bosses with this one. Very nifty. Very good. What to do to solve our mana issues? We have the cluster here. I didn't actually implement this cluster until Act 3 after I noticed, well, all of those additional support gems are increasing the cost of our skill massively. So we have 2 solutions. We can either pick those here or early on. We can pick conservative casting right here. Conservative casting right here is a little bit worse than this one. Additionally, we get 4% maximum mana on kill with those points. Later on, you can get a jewel with the percentage applied here. So you don't need those points and can spec out of those. You can apply the mana cost efficiency here instead and then save a few points. An alternative is that you can actually put stats on your helmet that reduce the cost. I don't have the crafting material, but there is one that introduces around 30% cost reduction onto your helmet, which is really, really strong. So you would save on additional cost through skill points here. Other than that, the build is basically looking the same as before. I'm planning on grabbing some additional deflection nodes here, and they also provide us with cost reduction. So if we pick those, I don't need those anymore. Deflection is really strong in this build, especially later, and we have some additional really nice nodes right here. Increased maximum energy and evasion, and we get resistances and faster recharge rate, so those are really potent. There is some here, but they're in an awkward position. Those up here are a little bit better, but there is also some really good defensive nodes here, like staunch deflection. You cannot be maimed or bleeding by deflected hits. That's actually quite potent. And around those nodes here, there is also a really good node, Heavy Frost here. Hits ignore non-negative elemental resistance of frozen targets. Since we freeze targets constantly, we actually negate the elemental weakness here. So we don't need to slot in elemental weakness later on, but for bosses I would still do it. Bosses are not always frozen and we consume the freeze, so it's just for one hit. But with elemental weakness, we have the elemental resistance reduction on bosses all the time. Anyway, all updates will be down below in the Mobalytics planner. I will update it daily, and this sums up the current update for my build. If you have any questions, comment down below, leave a like, leave a subscription, and see you next time. Bye.